really. So what I'd like to ask is, I know that you signed when you had the information that we're going to record the session. So I hope you don't mind that. And it would be nice if are you able to put your pictures on as well, because that's nice throughout the time as well. So so first of all, welcome to our first BELMAS virtual gender and leadership research mentor workshop, which is aimed at ECRs. So it's very, very exciting for us that we're going to give you some time, and you're going to be able to use the time to ask whatever questions you want. It's an early career meeting, and it's really supporting scholarship internationally. So I know some of you are here from the UK, but some of you are here in the UK, but they're also international. So that's really nice. We're aiming to be here for an hour and 15 minutes, I think we've put down. Was it an hour and a half? Can't remember now. And what we're going to do, there's a structure we've got. I'm just doing the introduction at the present moment. And there were kind of three broad buckets of scholarly ways of talking, which we're going to be presenting to you. One is on teaching, one is on scholarship, and one is on service. And all of those are going to be provided by my colleagues, which we're going to introduce in a moment. And then also, once we've spent about 10 minutes on each of those sections, we will also open up the floor for you to ask whatever questions you want to about those particular areas we've just spoken about, or anything else you think which is connected to scholarly work as an early career researcher and how you can move forward. So, and without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues to introduce themselves, and then I'll come back to myself and introduce myself properly as well. So I'm going to go to my right, which is Kay, and I'm going to let Kay introduce herself with a little bit of insight of who she is, and then I'll pass the baton on to Ponsu.
Thank you, Victoria. So I'm Kay Fuller. I'm Professor of Gender and Educational Leadership at the University of Nottingham. I'm also the convener for the Centre for Research in Educational Leadership and Management. And I'm pleased to be here as a member of this co-convening rig with Ponsu and Victoria. We've been working together for 12 years on this. So I'm really pleased to try to give you some insights into my topic, which is going to be academic service, is what I'm going to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kay. It's on to you, Ponsu.
Hi, everyone. I think this is going to be nice because it's such a small group, and it's going to allow enough discussion and engagement. And we will bear in mind that some of you will already have lots of experience on various other things that we're going to be talking about. So my name is Ponsu Morosi, and I am based at the University of Warwick, and I am an associate professor there of educational leadership and management. And I lead a program, a master's program on educational leadership and management. And so together with Kay and Victoria and Saida, who's not here, we co-convene this particular rig. And when Kay mentioned there for a minute that we've been doing this for 12 years, it really sounded like a very long time. And I think it is a very long time. And part of what we try to do now is really to find people who are interested. We don't want to hold on to this with our dear lives. But I think part of what we want to be achieving with these events, particularly this year, is to try and find people who are interested in taking over from us and perhaps taking this in a different direction. So I look very much to the discussions tonight, and I'll be leading our discussion on the broad section on scholarship. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you very much, Ponsu. And good evening, Alex. I think you might be having a few issues, but don't worry, just connect with us when you can. So I'm Dr. Victoria Shawamni. I'm also an associate professor. I'm based at University College London, and my particular area is, I suppose it is gender and identity and leadership, and very much also looking at experiences of women, and particularly Black women in the workplace, and also looking at young girls in school as well, because that in itself kind of prepares for the next generation of leaders as well. So I'm very excited. I'm going to take on the role of the teaching and give you some, and start off with that. So Saida is also part of our group, as we've said, and she's not able to be with us tonight, but all of us could have done any of these. So I'm going to do the teaching. So I'm going to start off. I've not got any slides, but I'm just going to speak. So I hope that's okay. So you may wonder why we've put teaching in there. Well, I'll talk for myself. I come from a Russell Group University, where it is for predominantly research one, as you may call it, which is very much a research university. However, we also do teaching, which is an important part of our work. So when I think about teaching, it is really looking at, I see my research actually informs my teaching, and my teaching informs my research. And that's the way I work with everything I do when it's to do with my scholarly work. So what about the teaching itself, and what's important? Well, what's important, what I find, is that you're able to find a niche that is something which you want to develop to be able to work with your students across the board. So whether you're working with undergrad, masters, or doctoral level, I think it's that. So how have I done that? So I've always wanted to do work around gender, and whatever gender looks like. So when I'm working with undergrads, I want them to understand what gender looks like within education. And so I will work on different, on feminist theory, and I will also look at gender identities and try and look at that. So the undergrads understand what gender looks like within the course. And I'm looking at both Kate and Ponso to see if you've timed me, because I forgot to put my timer on. So if you put 7 minutes left, that kind of makes it fair that I've done 3 minutes. Also, when I go to the master's level, I also build on that, and that's when I will also start to think about some of my research I've done and introduce that to be part of my teaching. And then, of course, the work I do with doctoral students, I lead on a research module, which is on research methodology, and I'm really bringing in one of my areas which I'm quite passionate about, which is storying and narrative. So I teach on that, and I give students an opportunity to consider their own positionality within their work they do. So as you can see, undergrad, that I do a starter point of what gender looks like and what it looks like through an intersectional lens at that stage. I then build on it when it's master's level, because then the students are wanting to specialize a little bit more on what it looks like within a specific area. Most of them want to do something around gender in the workplace, whether it's to do with leadership, whether it's to do with developing the curriculum, whatever it is, it has a gender and an intersectional lens. And when it comes to doctoral level, and when I'm doing the teaching there, again, it's really opening up that whole discussion around identity and what that looks like in practice. So I do that nationally. I also get asked to do it internationally. And I've run over the last 8 years some intensive courses in Germany. And intense mean I'd go there for a week and I do something on a couple of things. I'm over there at the moment. I'm in Germany at the moment. And one of the course which I've designed this particular time is looking at Black feminism through the lens of films. So that's another area which I do. And then I've also done something which is called critical whiteness studies, working with a whole group of German students, predominantly white, and looking at critical whiteness theory within that. Now, why do I mention that? Because much of my research and my theory which I use, which I've done for quite a while, is critical whiteness theory, intersectionality as an approach, and also I will use other theories as well to be able to make sense of my particular work as well. So you've got my national, my international, and out of that becomes also, I might do, I get engaged with doing other types of work as well, which is keynotes. So keynotes would be based on some of the teaching done.
Can I ring you back when I'm not presenting online? Thank you.
And what was I saying? So I'm also some of my teaching enables me to do some keynotes as well, which is quite exciting. So I will end, I think, because I'm not sure how many minutes I've got left. But as I've said from the beginning, research informs my teaching, and teaching informs my research. I feel, and I've also done the SHFEA teaching, senior teaching, whatever it is. What's it called again? The higher education.
Senior teaching fellow.
Teaching fellow. Yes, I couldn't think of it. Yes, I've also done that as well, which not because I didn't know how to do it, but we're kind of encouraged to do that. And I'd encourage all if you're in the UK to do that type of course as well. It kind of helps, and it's something else to tick off on your CV. Now, I think that's enough about teaching for me. And oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to say about the approach. My approach in my teaching fits my approach what I do with lots of things, which is conversational, but it also is theoretical. I do like to engage with the students to be able to connect with the conceptual work, which I do a lot of. So you won't see me spending 10 weeks just standing in front of a class and just giving a full lecture. I will give lectures, but I do a lot of engagement so students can really understand the conceptual work we're trying to do. I'm going to stop there. I'm sure you'll come back to me if you want to ask any more questions, which we will do later on. So the next person, which is going to be doing the next part, is Ponsu.
Thanks, Victoria. So I'm going to be talking to the part of scholarship. And I think for all of us here, early career researchers, or not even early career researchers, we know how much the word scholarship characterizes or shapes the work that we do in these universities. And I thought it was interesting there that Victoria's presentation started off with her saying that she works for a Russell Group university. And we know, those who work for Russell Group universities, how much emphasis is put on scholarship and how much that scholarship does not necessarily include teaching. And yet those of us who are in those institutions, I don't know, maybe it is just my Russell Group university, but that increasingly there's a lot more focus on teaching, but the recognition of it is something that we may want to engage or we may want to question. So I'm going to be talking broadly to 5 areas around scholarship. And these are talking about the research agenda, setting a research agenda, transitioning from postdoc to first faculty position, and maybe talking about presentations and networks, as all of those are things that really shape the work that we do around scholarship. And I'll try to place my own work around that as well, but also leave the space really open for questions and engagements. And I would hold my hand up first to say I'm not an expert in any of these. I think what brings us here is to share experiences, but also to kind of actualize, if I can use that word, or make some of these things seem less unattainable, if that makes some sense. Because Victoria also put something that I think we share, I think all of us in some ways or other, which is the focus on women and gender. And we're still working on what that means. If I can speak for myself, I'm still working on what that means, what the world or the field, our field of educational leadership and management looks like, and what does it mean to be looking into gender within that space, and what does this gender look like? How do we define it? How do we characterize it? So when we teach gender-related modules, what does that mean, and what do we exactly do? So talking about setting a research agenda, usually this would refer to a whole range of activities that talk to defining what you do within this space as an early career researcher or as a researcher in general. And sometimes it's about defining your topic, which is beyond just defining your PhD topic, if that's the stage at which you are. But it simply means being clear about what you do, because once you are clear about what you do, then you can start working very intently and intentionally towards a particular agenda, which gives you focus and helps you build expertise. Now, I think that may sound like we always know what we are about and what we want to achieve. We don't, but we figure out as we go along. And sometimes you can finish your whole PhD not knowing exactly if that's the area. You know you're passionate about it when you're doing it, but you're not sure whether that is the area that is going to make your scholarship, and whether that is the area that you want to be identified with going forward. And from thinking like that, then it is okay to expand. It is okay to diversify. It is okay to change. One thing that you probably have been told over and over again is that the PhD just gives you the license. It gives you the license to do everything else after that. But it is such an important license, because until you have it, nobody listens to you. And so that's why sometimes, even when you feel like you could skip all these things because you've been working in higher education for so long, and the whole idea of going back and being called an early career researcher when you've been working for 20 years in higher education, it's just puts you in a different space. But these are some of the things that we put up with, because this is the field in which we work. But it doesn't mean that we accept without scrutinizing, without criticizing, and sometimes that could be your whole field of study. And we certainly know that there are people who are making a career or a scholarship on studying higher education or doctoral studies with a particular lens of gender. And so with that in mind, once the PhD is finished, then we know that there's a period called postdoc, and there's two ways, as far as I'm concerned, of talking about this. And one is thinking about a postdoc as a fixed period of appointment or employment, whatever you put it, or however you experience it. And another way is looking at it as any period after completing your PhD, which doesn't necessarily link or tie to any position or any research assistantship or anything at any university at all. And this could include sometimes being in actually a formal employment, but that's formal employment that is not called a postdoctoral fellowship. And now, the postdoctoral fellowship is a nice thing to have, but only if it lasts for so long. I mean, anything that goes beyond 2-3 years in a traditional postdoctoral fellowship is not desirable. And depending on where you are, for some people, that becomes a period of uncertainty. You're not a fully employed staff member. You're not a student. On the other hand, you're not working towards, yes, you are working towards building your scholarship because you are probably researching and publishing. But sometimes, depending on where you are, you're probably given a role to work with a professor. You end up working with that professor and publishing with that professor or for that professor, even worse. And so sometimes it ends up being a period of exploitation for some people. But there's also a period of employment, where you get into an assistant professorship role. And that is probably a nice role because there you are starting to work and build towards your pension. And I think the three of us here experienced the postdoctoral fellowship in a different way. I was, well, I guess I could say I was fortunate because it was just a year. I had a fixed postdoctoral fellowship. The period where you're not a staff member, but you're not a student at the same time, and you're not working towards your pension, you're just in between. It was nice in some ways, but it's not something you would want to go running for years and years. And I've seen people get excited about a 3-year and a 5-year postdoctoral fellowship. And I, in my view, that is not something to be excited about. But we do have experienced those positions in a different way. But the bottom line, and for all this, depending on whichever way you experience it, is to start working around it and to develop a clear research agenda again. So that's how this point links to the first, because you are working on this, but you are expanding. And this is where you have an opportunity to expand and diversify or even change, because now you probably have the license and you probably have, instead of being narrowly focused on that one doctoral research, but now you have the time and the space to look into other things. And that's what happened with most of us. 3 minutes, right? Thank you, Victoria. So we start expanding and finding projects. And this is really, I think the point I want to make about this is that this is a point at which you want to start getting real experience, and real experience that counts in these universities, particularly in the United Kingdom. And I presume that, except for Raymond, most of the audience is in the United Kingdom. This is where you want to get real experience in terms of learning how to write grants and leading on some projects, and not necessarily be participating in other people's projects, because you are working towards getting that research agenda. I think the one last thing that I probably have time to talk about is the publications. We are all familiar with the publish or perish mantra. And that is so much a thing for these Russell Group universities and other universities. Even if they are teaching intensive universities, there is still an expectation that you will publish, and if you don't publish, you are going to perish. So there's reason to be more intentional about these things, and that is why being very clear about what you want to work on helps, because then you can build your scholarship on a particular area, start identifying the relevant journals, start identifying the relevant conferences, and start identifying the relevant networks, which is really, really important in advancing scholarship. I think all 4 of us actually, who are leading this REG, are part of one huge network of women in leadership internationally. Now, that's a big network, but there are other smaller networks that we can be part of, some of which you initiate. There's one thing that we all do when we attend conferences, and that is to exchange and share details. Now, I don't know, my university does not produce business cards anymore, so it's no longer feasible to change those business cards, but we still exchange details, and sometimes we share these details, but we never end up doing anything about them. And if you are really intent about building a research agenda, developing a network, building your scholarship, these are some of the things that you don't just collect because you attended the conference and somebody asked, but we still have business cards. That's great. We don't. Yes, but use them very intentionally. The networks that we develop on social media, things like LinkedIn and a whole range of other things, we shouldn't just do those things for the fun of them, but use them very intently. And I'm not a very good role model with regard to that. So this is one area I'm going to say, do what I say, not what I do. And with that, I'm going to leave a space for my colleague, Kay, to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ponce. Kay. Do you want me to time you, Kay? Should I put the timer on?
Yes, do. First of all, I need to apologise. I think in all the time that we were working from home and doing multiple presentations and teaching online, that's the first time I've had a phone call in the middle of doing a presentation. And unfortunately, members of my family have COVID, and they clearly thought it would be an okay time to ring me at 7 o'clock in the evening and I wouldn't be working, but they're wrong. So what we're doing this evening, it strikes me, is academic service. That our work with the RIG counts as academic service. And so my topic is to talk about academic service. And I think that it's referred to as a classic, in the literature, it's referred to as a classic contract, the research, teaching, academic service, three-legged approach to an academic's work. So I wanted to think about, well, what does it mean? At my university, I'm expected to carry out the research, I'm expected that Ponso's talked about, I'm expected to teach, that Victoria's talked about, and I'm expected to do academic service. And we're assessed on each component of our work for promotion purposes. So in my workload, I looked at my workload, I'm allocated time for, one thing is a heading that's got committees, and the other thing is citizenship. And I'm going to say a little bit about each of those. Committees, we have a number of hours allocated on our workload for general committee work, is what it calls it. That's things like staff meetings, staff development events, and other committee time in terms of leadership roles, such as course and programme leaders, and directors of particular functions in a school or a university. Then citizenship is described as a broad category, including things like events and graduation open days, specific university work such as chairing panels, interview panels, faculty events and working groups. School citizenship would be things like peer. We have a system that's called PDPR, which is professional development peer reviewing. So that's kind of an appraisal process. Mentoring, external partnership development, representation on governing bodies, journal refereeing, and board membership. And then it says, and more besides ... And I think that captures something in saying that, you know, there's a huge array of activity that we actually refer to as academic service. I've been doing some research about some of this. I've been looking at women working in research, and the literature refers to academic housework. And that's work that women appear to do. So it's a highly gendered issue, this. In a recent survey that we carried out at our university about women's work in research, one participant commented that men appeared not to be able to organise conferences. When we held the Women Leading Education Across Continents conference at Nottingham, the then director of research told me it was a shame there would be no recognition for that work. So there's likely a flaw in how we value different sorts of work in higher education. On the other hand, when our woman Vice-Chancellor arrived, she insisted that everyone applying for promotion should contribute to academic service. She knows the work is highly gendered and that it's vital to the functioning of higher education. So looking at the literature, Armani et al., who are scientists, recognise that service work is often invisible or dismissed. They say, serving as a department chair or a member of a thesis committee is clearly service. However, chairing a diversity, equality and inclusion committee and leading a student wellness initiative are often viewed as passion projects instead of official service. As a result, the service load is not shared equally by all members of the academic community, and increasingly members of historically excluded communities shoulder a larger burden. Not so long ago, this is my experience, I was told by a very senior colleague that he did not want me to do any more service work. This fundamentally misrecognized the important relationship between my research, teaching, and service with respect to my interest in gender and educational leadership and my intersectional feminist perspective. It's vital to me to be a professional activist. And I refer to Judith Sachs' work on professional activism. Someone who notices things need to change in an institution for the better. A colleague who speaks up when things are wrong, who uses her scholarship to contribute towards working towards social justice. He missed the point that this service is a form of impact, often within the institution, but also beyond with respect to public engagement. So service might be to take scholarship to close to practice contexts of schools and professional networks and associations. It's part of carrying our scholarship for action. It's also called knowledge exchange. Our university recognises the esteem factors. We're asked to submit them regularly. That includes our voluntary work for school governing bodies, for example, and charities such as BELMAS and other professional associations and networks. And the last point I want to make is that service is the key word. So we're talking about a kind of servant leadership, and many of you will have come across the notion of servant leadership, that we lead to serve, that it is a public service. But I want to be thoughtful about that, because I have heard people talking about their taking on responsibilities and roles of leadership in our institution, and they refer to it as academic. Well, I'm doing it for, it's just academic service, Kay. And it seems to imply that they're doing us all a favour by taking on this role. Well, I don't think they're doing us all a favour. I think that they have to do the work well. They have a responsibility to do their academic service in as a appropriate and good way as possible. They should have excellence in that work. So I don't think that just because it's academic service, people should, and then they're volunteering for it, that it should be done badly. I think it should still be done very well to the best of our ability. Please remember that we don't get paid for that work that we take on. Some leadership roles in universities, you get like an honorarium that you might get when you finish doing the role. Some roles do hold an additional salary, but actually an awful lot of the roles that we might call academic service roles, you don't get any extra money. You get paid the scale point that you get for doing the substantive role. So a lot of those roles are taken on because you want to do them, because you care about them, because they matter to you. Or if you're a careerist, you're doing them because you want it on your CV to be seen as a collegiate colleague, someone who believes in collegiality. Both things are important. I think that, we have a right to be ambitious in our careers, and we have a right to understand that these things matter. But they don't matter. They don't count for things that get measured like the ref in terms of the research that Ponce was talking about. They don't count in terms of things like the teaching excellence framework, that many of us have to think about as well. So academic service for me is really important because the work matters. It's what lubricates the organisations, and it's about finding spaces for us to speak up about things that are not right, that things that can be better too. That's really what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kay and Ponce. That was very, very helpful. I just wanted to just add one point, if I may, because I realised I didn't mention it. So I'm just going to take just 1.5 minutes. So what I didn't mention is partnership with colleagues, and that's really important as part of teaching, especially when you're starting off as early career researchers. You may not very much teaching, it depends on what you're doing, but many people now, when you're going for your next role, would expect you to be able to do some teaching. How do you do that? Partner with other people. How do you do that across universities? Get to know people across faculty. That's really important. Somebody may want you to be a guest lecturer, and just provide a guest lecture across the faculty. That's important. Also, you might have colleagues, especially one of the positive things about online work. I mean, Honsu and Kay both know that I just don't like online that much, is that you can get involved with another person's work internationally. You don't have to fly there, you can do it internationally. That's a really good way of doing it as well. And also, I think the last thing I wanted to say is teaching across faculty assignments, but also understanding your landscape. Understanding the landscape, what you're actually doing is important for teaching. Now, I think it's time now. I've said too much. And I think it's time to open up the floor. So for you to say some points. Oh, sorry, Kay. Yes.
I did just want to acknowledge that this is a really diverse group of participants here. I'm aware that there are people who are doing full-time PhDs. There are people who are studying for professional doctorates part-time. And Ponzo referred to us all having a different postdoc experience. I don't know what a postdoc experience is. I had no postdoc experience. I got my Ed.D. and I became an initial teacher educator. I didn't do a postdoc. So we've got different experiences, as Ponzo says, and we recognise that in the audience we've got people with very different experiences of doing their doctoral work as well. So we're keen to have the conversation, I think.
Yeah. And it's also nice as Jane's not with us, but we've got 4 people here. Please do say hello and say who you are. If you take a minute just to kind of introduce yourselves, that would be quite nice as well. Should I tap somebody on the shoulder? Oh, Raymond, are you going next? Right, okay, fantastic.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Kay, also, and Vic. Really, really educative. Thank you very much. So I am Raymond. I come from Ghana. I am based in Ghana. I completed my PhD studies in Cambridge in 2019, and then returned to Ghana. And I was fortunate to be employed straight away. So I started teaching about 3 years ago now. I have been here, and the institute where I work, we deal only with postgraduate students, masters and PhDs. So more of our focus is on the other 2 dimensions you talked about, research and then academic service, and a bit more of teaching. And so I will leave it at this, and maybe later on when others have introduced themselves, we can pick up with the rest. Thank you.
Thanks, Raymond. Anybody want to go next, or should I just point on somebody? Tap somebody on the shoulder. What about Alex? Hi, Alex.
I think Claire was ready as well.
Oh, Claire, I don't mind.
Hi, yeah, I don't mind going next if that works for everybody. Hello, sorry, I put my camera on.
Really?
Hi, my camera's been off because my toddler's coming in and out, so apologies for that. Hello, I've been lucky enough to meet a couple of you in person, but my name's Claire Harley. I'm an Ed.D. candidate at the University of Nottingham. I'm studying part-time for my Ed.D. and I'm also a full-time assistant principal at a secondary school in Leicestershire. My research interest is about teachers' professional identity and how that's constructed, and also whether the use of educational research links into that, but also kind of just that all aspects of teacher identity. And if I can do anything useful in academia, it would be going some way to solving the teacher retention crisis, particularly for women in their 30s like me.
Thank you very much. Alex has disappeared at the moment. Maybe she's got internet problems. So we've got our next person as well. Is it for Razan? For Razan, yes.
Hi, thank you so much, Kay, Ponce, Victoria. It was nice to hear again. So it was a motivational speech from you. And I think while listening your speech, I was thinking about my own experience, where to go, how to go, because I quit my job in secondary school. I was a history teacher, deputy head teacher for pastoral care, and now I'm doing my PhD. I'm in my third year at Nottingham University, and after PhD, maybe I might do postdoc, as Ponce mentioned, or maybe I might go to the higher education sector. So it was really helpful to get different perspectives from you. Thank you so much. So my research is about, I'm trying to explore the understanding and the practice of educational leadership in mainstream schools in Kazakhstan. So I'm trying to use phenomenological approach in order to understand teachers, head teachers, middle leaders' perceptions about leadership in my own context. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've got open now for questions. Please do. The time's yours. So I'm going to ask my colleagues actually, because they can be part of this conversation just to get the things moving as such. So when you think about teaching, what was the hardest thing you found, and the easiest thing you found when you started to teach adults and as a in the university when you transitioned from teaching in school?
Thank you, Victoria. I think I think I was worried about the scholarship that would underpin my teaching, because I became an initial teacher educator and my research was not in English education, and that was what I was actually teaching. So my research was always in gender and educational leadership, and so I was concerned that I was doing some scholarship work to make sure that my teaching was research informed, but they didn't marry up. And you both might be aware that when I applied for the job at Nottingham, it was specifically to marry up my research with my teaching. That was really what the impetus was, because probably I'm lazy, that I want to do the work for two reasons, not one. And Borjan and I were at Pat Thompson's celebratory lecture last night, and some of the people who came out of that were saying her breadth of knowledge is so vast that we cannot imagine being able to give a lecture of the sort that she gave last night. So, I mean, she writes about arts education, she writes about educational leadership. She's got just such a wealth of knowledge that when she's working with you as a colleague or as a doctoral student, she can just pick out this theory or that theory and say, have you thought about looking at it through that lens? She has such a breadth of knowledge. I knew I'd never have that. And I said to one of our colleagues, I'm quite happy being in my own little space, that I'm happy that I've got sufficient knowledge to be able to do that. So I really do think, in answer to your question, that the most difficult thing was having the scholarship to underpin my teaching. That was the most difficult thing. The best thing was that I felt able to teach from experience, from practical knowledge. I was very secure in terms of my practical knowledge because I'd been an English teacher for 15 years and I'd led professional development in schools, and so I felt able to talk to adults in terms of teaching in classrooms. So I think they're the two things I would say. Thank you for asking.
You. That's really, really helpful. And so moving on, and I'm just going to ask a question to Ponce, and hopefully this generates some questions from the colleagues which are in the space here, which is when you think about your research, when you first came over and started teaching in a UK university, Ponce, what was the kind of the strength of that, and also what was the developmental aspect which you felt you had to learn, because here you are coming overseas?
I just remember how terrifying it was, Victoria. And yes, really, that was the biggest transition. And I think I want to say this particularly to international colleagues on the platform, how this is doable, but it's not easy. But it's doable, but not easy, if that makes sense. And when I came to Warwick back then, it used to be it was the time of milk and honey, I think, of professional development for teachers that was provided by the Labour government. And so there were tons and tons of teachers in professional development programs at universities, master's programs. And I remember that when I came to the university, there was about 500 students across the 3-year of part-time study. And I came to be responsible and lead that project. I mean, I could have taken the next flight to go back home. If I was told that that's what I was going to do, I'm not sure I would have taken that job. I was literally petrified. But that's part of the experience, isn't it? You do get out of your comfort zone because I had experience teaching in schools like Kay did, I think. And I taught for a couple of years, which it wasn't that long, for a school in Lesotho, which is my home country. And then I went to South Africa for postgraduate study. And then I went to Canada for a postdoc. So this postdoc thing, I really lived it. And I know exactly how it feels to be in that space. It was a comfortable one for me because fortunately it didn't go on for too long. And being in Canada, coming from South Africa, what more can you ask for? It was a luxury. It was really a wonderful experience. But coming, and then I got the job in the UK from Canada. And I think the people who gave me the job just saw potential. Somebody coming from South Africa, going to Canada to do postdoc. Oh, this woman can do great things. Let's bring her here and see what she can do. And yes, I found the role terrifying. It was a huge and very steep learning curve for me. I didn't know the system. I didn't understand the context. The only thing I knew was the language, which was a great advantage, I think, because then there isn't a corner that you can turn to where people would speak something you can't hear or you can't understand. And I can always imagine how terrifying it must be to go to a foreign country where, like I did my postdoc in Montreal, and in McGill in Montreal, people speak in the street, people speak French. And I remember having this terrible experience of having a fall. I slipped in the snow. And I fell, almost cracked my tailbone, and I was taken to hospital. And when I got in hospital, the nurse was talking to me in French. And I was saying to her, sorry, I don't speak French. And she was like, sorry, I don't speak English. This is a French city, da, 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 da. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And I know that there are so many colleagues who experience that in their daily work, in their environment. Sometimes it comes that explicitly, other times not. So the point I really want to make in responding to your question, Victoria, is that some of these things are terrifying, but they are doable. And I think you just have to give yourself that opportunity to learn and to grow. And I was very lucky that I had these two women here that I'm sharing this platform with. I met them very early on. I remember the first BELMAS I attended, I met Kay. And I think maybe possibly the next one I met Victoria, and we have been in this network forever. And they probably don't know because I haven't told them, but they really have been huge pillars of strength for me. And so that's what the thing about networks, when I said you have big networks and small networks, that's how you use your networks to kind of help you settle, help expand your own networks. There are so many other people that I got to know through these two women here that I'm sharing a platform with. And so really utilizing those and learning from them and allowing yourself to grow and being open to scrutiny and criticism, but being open to growth and knowing that sometimes there were many times when I felt I'm going to go back to South Africa. In fact, I did go. I did go back. But when I went back, it wasn't because I was terrified. I was already comfortable. It's just that I felt I had done enough, but only to get there to realize I hadn't, and I came back. But really just being open to growing, open to learning, and having a clear research agenda. That thing is so important, because if I wasn't so clear about what I wanted to achieve with my scholarship, I probably would have made different choices. So because I was clear, I knew that staying in the WLE network was important. Networking with Victoria and Kay and Saida was important, but also keeping my focus. And unlike Victoria, and maybe Kay in her recent role, I'm not so lucky in terms of, but I am, because I can shape that in a way. And the point I wanted to make was about my teaching and what I teach. So I teach the mainstream field of educational leadership and management. But I have an opportunity to bring in gender there, and diversity, and a whole range of other things. And sometimes that's one thing that we are so privileged about in higher education, in that there's no national curriculum that we are working around that restricts you to doing certain things. And I can only imagine what the teachers who are open to critical race scholarship must have felt when there were conversations about how useless it is and why it should be banned in the schools and that kind of thing. But luckily for us in higher education, there hasn't been anything like that. So really just listening and going with what you have, but also being very clear about what you want to achieve and utilizing what's around you, and just allowing yourself to grow. Thanks.
Wow. So just asking those two questions to both my colleagues opened up another round of discussion. But this is for yourselves, the early career researchers on this particular call. What else do you want to ask? I mean, is there something you'd like to share, you'd like to ask? This is your moment. Don't be shy. I'd offer you some biscuits, but I can't.
I think Claire was doing bath time. I think that she's had to put a child to bed, actually.
Raymond.
She might not still be here.
Raymond.
Thank you so much. You can see that the picture in my room has changed. The electricity just went out, so I have to switch to my mobile phone.
I know exactly what that means, Raymond. I know exactly what that means.
So thank you once again. I'm really excited, and I feel overjoyed being part of the conversations this evening. There are just a few things I want to bring on board to hear your thoughts on them. And this is particularly based on the context where I am, a developing world. Ponzo talked about clear research agenda. And when I was studying in Cambridge, I looked at leadership for learning. So the emphasis was on educational leadership and learning. And when I got back to Ghana and I was given this employment, I noticed that most of the time from our part of the world, the research revolves around, if you like, the problems, complaints and complaints and complaints. And I said, but I mean, in the darkness, there are some few bright spots that can also be taken advantage of. So what I have been doing so far in my very short life as an academic is to pick the key concepts where I feel my studies so far have revolved around, and that's leadership and learning. So I take leadership and I look at the issues, and that's because I believe that from leadership, everything rises, and on leadership, everything falls. I really believe in that. And so I pick leadership, and then I look at the other topical issues around it. So my first effort, at least the first 2 articles I published with email, were to do with leadership and gender in the context of Ghana. And then currently I am looking at something that I think is very helpful, but I'm facing a lot of challenges. And that is leadership and artworks. We all talk about leadership, at least in the context of Ghana, how important it is. And we want to be good leaders. We want the children to grow and become very effective leaders. And I spotted a school where everywhere in the school they have incorporated artworks, which after I went in there to observe, I realized that this could actually contribute to leadership development. And I decided to spend a whole year observing and also doing interviews. I have this fantastic data, but what am I hearing every time I try to check from the journals about this work? They kept saying it's one school. People in Europe and America will not be interested because it's one school. And my point is, but there's something unique here. Can you at least hear me out? And for me, that has so far been one of the challenges. I thought looking at artworks and how they can inspire youngsters to think critically, to be empathetic, to be sensitive to the environment in which they are, on their own capabilities based on the way they use the environment, to be able to learn to live, to be able to learn to share what they have with others. So that has been one area. And I keep saying, but where do we go? And here we are in Ghana, at least in my university, you have to publish in a Scopus Index journal. You take this to the local journals, and when they publish it, it's not recognized. Where do I go? That is very frustrating. So should I just abandon what is actually relevant and just try to gather so many schools, identify problems and report and get published? That is one challenge. And I would like to hear your thoughts because you have been in the field for quite some time. I'm sure you've had your own experiences along these lines. That is one thing I want to share with the team here for your thoughts, your counsel.
Would you like us to take that one and comment on that for you?
Yes.
Yes. So Kay or Ponsu or even myself. Kay.
I'm happy to make a start, and Raymond, I totally understand what you're saying, and we've been blessed to have our conference for women leading education in Ghana. I have visited Ghana, and we worked with our colleague Joyce Tago Wilson, who was formerly at the University of Winnipeg, and we have a colleague at Cape Coast University as well in our group. And I'm also aware that the Cambridge team developed Leadership for Learning in Ghana with local head teachers as well. I'm aware of that project. And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that you've done your PhD there. I think with the One School article, I think I have been encouraged by colleagues in the past to develop the theory, to make the article theoretical and use the school, the wonderful practice that's really your story that you want to tell. That's the illustration, that's the example, but it's couched in the theory. And that's a way to be able to get published in those high-ranking peer-reviewed journals. That's a possibility, I think. But I think it's just such a dreadful thing that we are measured on those sorts of metrics, which are not helpful for the profession, because the profession needs to read about the school that you're describing. And yet, if we publish in professional journals where teachers can read it, we're not deemed to be good academics. So I think that when I've written about a single case, it has always been in a way to develop the theory. And that's helped me to get published in some of those journals. It's been more theoretical, even though it's one case, one school. It is possible. I hope that begins to help. I'll let someone else.
Thank you. Thank you, Kay. Very helpful.
I was also thinking about, who was the scholar which did our lovely pictures? Pet, isn't it? Pet.
Penn Mendonça.
Mendoza.
Yes, yes. I was thinking about her when you were speaking, but also, I mean, I'll just jump in very quickly. It is a challenge, and it's very innovative. And I understand what you're doing, but also look at other journals, like art and education, journals which are art-based and they're educational-based, and they may accept a piece of work around leadership, because sometimes you have to be a trailblazer in particular journals as well. And I think that opens up the door with also thinking. Bonso.
Yeah, I think Raymond, my colleagues have given really, really good practical advice in terms of getting your work published. But I share your frustration, and because I think that the amount of work that it sounds you have done is really so important and huge. Spending a whole year in one school, that's one thing that we always criticize the field of educational leadership and management on, that we don't spend enough time learning what the school leaders do, learning how the children respond to leadership, and learning how leadership actually influences learning and all other activities. And that's exactly what you're doing. And there's no way you would get into any depth of that without spending that much time and collecting the different pieces. Electricity has come back in your world, Raymond. We call it load shedding in South Africa. I don't know what you call it in Ghana. But yes, and I think that's really I get excited listening to that, because I think there's real possibility there of grounded theory and what Victoria says about looking into other journals which are not email, which are not education leadership quarterly, EQA, education quarterly leadership or something like that, which are not the 5-star journals that we are all expected and measured by, which is really, really frustrating. And some of these is very much colonial. If you look at what our universities are doing on the continent and putting us through and measuring us by standards that are not ours, I mean, what a benefit. And now Raymond gets electricity, but connectivity cuts because I think he's just left. But that's just the point I wanted to make. Maybe other people who are still on the call who have some more points, and I realize that we are getting closer towards the time.
Exactly. So we've got 2 more people left. Any comments you'd like to make? I'm not sure Claire's back again. Oh, she looks like she might be.
I was just explaining that I've actually missed the vast majority of this thanks to a toddler that won't go to bed. I'm really sorry, but this is the lived experience of balancing all this stuff. So I'm sure it was very interesting, and I'm really very sorry.
Don't apologize. That's life.
Yeah, and it's recorded. I don't know. Ryan is on the call, so he can say what's going to happen with the recordings. But I think it's there, and it will be available, Claire, should you wish to get to benefit from what was said in your absence. But I also wanted to say, Bojan, that I appreciate your having left your full-time role and coming to study, which was probably well-paying because you had progressed into senior leadership in schools. and leaving all of that and coming to study, and that's such a bold decision to make. And I think we don't look enough into those kinds of decisions and experiences and the challenges people face at coming back to study in a foreign country at this level, and the anticipations and expectations of how that might shape our career advancement, or as opposed to what we were expecting. And so I think you're probably having wonderful experiences in Nottingham, and if Kay is your supervisor, you definitely are not.
Kay is not my supervisor, but I've got lots of support from Kay. In my first year, I got some training about marking master student assignments from Kay, and it was amazing. I still appreciate. And in terms of the moving from your full-time job as a teacher to the PhD was, I think, crucial for me, especially doing PhD at Nottingham was challenging for me as a PhD who speaks English as a third language, because my first language is Kazakh, second is Russian, and I'm trying to write this PhD thesis in my third language. And for me, it was challenging to understand the in-depth theoretical frameworks while doing your PhD, while trying to understand what you want to research in your PhD thesis. And attending the conferences was really useful for me to get different perspectives from different people from different contexts. And while listening some speeches from experienced people like you, it was also helpful for me.
Thanks, Bojan.
Thank you. Raymond, do you want the last point? I know you was trying to do point number 2, and then after you, we will say our goodbyes and everything.
Thank you. So the second point was about mentorship. I remember when we were given the opportunity to fill in the survey questionnaire about BELMAS, one of the things I said that it felt like those of us who are in the developing world are left out. We are here, and someone like me, I came from Cambridge, and as a priest for many years, I haven't been here anyway. So when I came, I felt like a stranger. I am teaching, but there is this tagging that, okay, he's been out, he's from Cambridge. So when I arrive here, anytime you draw close to people, the immediate reaction is, don't bring your Cambridge ideologies or ideas here, okay? This is how we have always been. And I am trying very hard to get into that space where we collaborate, first as equal, as co-equal, but also those who have been experienced in the field, to work with them and learn something, because experience is wisdom. Unfortunately, that has been difficult. Now, we belong to association. BELMAS is the only one I belong to, and then Leadership for Professional Learning. These are the two. Yet, because of distance, because of what we call it, having to get visas to be part physically of some of the activities, somehow we are left behind. And I was thinking when I was joining BELMAS and I tried to attend at least 2 or 3 conferences, my hope was that since this is the field that we are in and we have experienced people who will be held, they'll hold our hands like you are doing, helping us to grow. And I think that probably is easier for those who are based in Europe or in the UK in particular. But here in Africa, it's difficult. Sometimes you may just have to write to someone you feel is experienced in the field and say, please, I have put together this. Can you look at it for me? If you're not lucky, you may not even get a response. If you're lucky, you may get. If you're not lucky, you may not. And I keep saying, so now where do I turn? Here in Ghana, the assumption is that, well, you are from there, so we wait to see how you're going to go about it. Then the association that I feel I belong to and I can be held, carry along, in many ways, you are left hanging. And so that has been very difficult. And this came to my mind because of the networking and the partnership. Yes, I've written to a whole lot of BELMAS members whose business cards I received and so forth. And I tried to link up. And nothing worked.
So
Well, you're now in a space where they will.
Sorry.
Yes, Kate.
Sorry, can I ask you about your supervision at Cambridge? Because I would have expected that your supervisors would support you, but that might not always be the case. But that would be my first suggestion, is to be seeking support for your publications from the people who supervised and mentored you at Cambridge. Is that not a possibility?
Yes, it's a possibility. And I
but
remember
not realistic.
Very, very well. Even as a doctoral student, my supervisor proposed that we start writing. And I still recall very well the portions of the work that I was asked to do, I did. My supervisor never did until I left Cambridge. When I was leaving Cambridge, the point was, let's keep collaborating. I remember the first article we collaborated on took about 2 years after I had done my part. No word from that side. Okay? And once, twice, thrice, I got confused. Okay.
Papers do take a long time to develop. I must admit, I'm not a fast writer. I do take time for ideas to gestate. And I'm sorry to hear that, because obviously there's a sense of urgency from one co-author and less of a sense of urgency from another co-author, and that's problematic, isn't it? I think we've all experienced some of that.
Right. I agree with you, especially given that, you have been in the field like my supervisor, and she knows best. My challenge had been no response. And when I say no response, no acknowledgement, and I remember twice we even met physically, where I more or less then did her part. In addition, we met in Dublin. When I came back, that took another 7 months. When I asked, where are we going with this? One article, 2 years, how do we move from here? It felt like I was pushing too much, so I have to backtrack. Okay, that's the thing I'm talking about. And I believe that my supervisor knows me very well, and obviously should be the first point of contact in terms of mentorship. But I also believe that
I've had it the other way round, where I've desperately wanted my doctoral student to do their part so that I can join in and co-author something, and they don't do their parts. So I have to say, okay, that paper's not going to happen. But I think that that's really not very good at all. I hope that none of my doctoral students ever feel that I don't answer their emails. I think that that's really not good.
Yeah. And I think that's where then the point of expanding your networks becomes really important, because you've become part of this network now, by attending this. We know about you, other colleagues who attended know about you. We recently worked on a book project with Victoria, and we would have loved to include that story, because we had one chapter. We didn't have a chapter from Ghana, I think, particularly the one looking at women in leadership in Ghana. That would have been really great. We just published a handbook on that. It would have been really great to to have that chapter there. But we are women who are working on this space, and Raymond, we are happy to help, collaborate, whatever you name it. And so do call on us. I mean, do write, do ask for a second reading of an article that you've put together. Do ask, and we'd be happy to help or refer you, or even make suggestions of journals. And I'm hearing this a lot, you know, the pressure that colleagues in the developing contexts are being put under pressure to publish in the 5-star journals. And I'm thinking this is so sad, because it's so difficult to get in there, one, and secondly, once you are there, not many of your own colleagues are going to access that work. And I think it is so important for the work that you do to be accessible to the people to whom it makes most relevance and resonance and difference. And so I think having networks and expanding and having further collaborations could actually tap into opening up other avenues of sharing our work. And without, the sad thing is that we are still going to be measured by these metrics of where we published, who we collaborate with, and that's really the saddest thing. But I think now that we've opened up the space, you've told us about your challenges. Let's see what we can do within the network. Let's see if we can reach some other colleagues of ours that we know in the context of where you are, and even here where we are. I do know a couple of West African colleagues here in the UK whom I think would be happy to collaborate. And yeah, let's see what we can do with that. But thank you so much for sharing that and attending this event.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're on mute, Queen.
Just want to say thank you very much. Thank you for raising your points, Raymond. It's very, very helpful. We have some men which we work with, some scholars, men which are scholars in gender, which we can also connect you with as well. But I want to say, first of all, thank you very much to both Ponsu and Kay for giving up your time as service and scholarly work to be able to be with us. And also behind the scenes, we've got Nick. Thank you very much, Nick. You can show your face, it's quite nice. I want to say thank you to you. And also thank you to our early career researchers. It's so lovely to see you. This is the first time we've done it. We'd like to do it again, I expect, as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your evening and keep in touch.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
And have a lovely
Thanks,
evening.
Victoria. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.